the Earth. A world of water. Nearly 3/4 of its surface lies beneath a blue patchwork of seas and oceans. For us, an alien realm we've barely begun to explore. Extraordinary life forms live within these depths, each shaped by a world of immense variety and extremes. Like the continents they encircle, our oceans are filled with stories to tell, secrets to uncover, and characters to meet. This is a journey into their beautiful but fragile world, where the struggle to survive produces enchanting elegance, breathtaking teamwork, and spellbinding encounters that reveal the magic of the Big Blue. At the southernmost end of the Earth lies one of its most extreme environments, Antarctica. The coldest, windiest, and most dramatic landscape on the planet. Mountains of ice, sub-zero oceans, and icebergs the size of a country create a unique world that has captured our imagination, yet is so remote that just 2 centuries ago it remained undiscovered. In this world of ice, life must find ways to survive against all the odds. The specialist survivors of this deep freeze can be found both above and below the surface of an icy ocean. Many show little fear of human visitors and are prepared to share their remote home. With explorers brave enough to endure the harsh conditions, to meet some of the planet's toughest survivors. And witness some of nature's most astonishing constructions. In a world where extreme adaptation is needed to survive, an icy kingdom whose ruler comes in a surprising form. A bold hunter that has become an undisputed master of this frozen world and a true legend of the Antarctic. The Tierra del Fuego, or Fireland, is the southernmost area of South America. This island archipelago is separated from the mainland by the Strait of Magellan and is a last staging post for journeys to one of the most extreme regions on our planet, the Antarctic. The surroundings are, however, anything but fiery. Instead, the region's name derives from the campfires of the indigenous people that lined the shores when the first European explorers arrived. At the tip of the archipelago lies Cape Horn, the southernmost point of the South American continent. Sailing around this isolated peninsula remains one of the most challenging nautical routes known to man. The area is swept by some of the strongest gales on the planet, the so-called Roaring Forties and Furious Fifties. That, until the opening of the Panama Canal, struck fear into the hearts of mariners looking to navigate this route to reach the west coasts of the Americas. Between Cape Horn and the Antarctic lie the waters of the Drake Passage, which extend for 800 kilometers to the Southern Ocean. Moving further south, icebergs are a sure sign that the Antarctic continent is about to fill the horizon. Half Moon Island is one of the few places of human habitation and is home to an Argentine naval base that is staffed during the summer months and can only be reached by sea or helicopter. Antarctica remains one of the last true wildernesses on Earth. Most of the sun's energy is reflected by the huge white shield of ice, helping to preserve the sub-zero temperatures at the surface. The coldest temperatures on the planet have been recorded here. But despite air temperatures reaching minus 35 degrees Celsius in summer and falling below minus 70 in winter, life can be found here. Survivors in a land dominated by one overriding feature: ice. Unlike its northern counterpart, the Arctic, which simply floats on top of the ocean, the Antarctic continent is formed from a landmass, but one that is almost entirely smothered in a thick layer of ice. This ice sheet covers almost 14 million square kilometers and represents 98% of the continent's total area, a vast expanse of frozen water 1.5 times the size of North America and nearly twice the size of Australia. These ice sheets average 1.5 kilometers in depth and represent 90% of the world's total ice and 70% of its fresh water. The Antarctic's ice cap is estimated to contain 30 million cubic kilometers of ice, which, if it melted completely, would raise the level of the world's oceans by around 60 meters. The Antarctic is the highest of all the continents, with an average elevation of 2,000 meters above sea level. It's also the windiest place on Earth, and in places the average wind speed reaches more than 35 kilometers an hour and can gust to speeds approaching 250 kilometers an hour. Despite the extreme conditions, since its discovery in 1820, the continent has been an alluring challenge for intrepid human explorers. Although it was not until 1910 that Captain Robert Scott and Roald Amundsen set off on their legendary expeditions to reach the South Pole. Today, several research stations are populated by several thousand people, but there are no permanent residents, and Antarctica has never had a native human population. These hardy scientists live alongside many permanent Antarctic residents that are specialists of this frozen world and bring life to its icy shores in unexpected abundance. At first sight, the Antarctic appears to be an inhospitable world. Precipitation averages 200 millimeters a year at the coast, and even less inland. And on this basis, the continent is classified as a desert. The plunging temperatures and vast expanses of ice restrict the types of plants and animals that are found here, but have not excluded life altogether. The freezing waters between the icebergs can produce hotspots of life. For a few months of the year, the sunlight becomes strong enough to melt some of the sea ice and promote large blooms of tiny aquatic plants known as phytoplankton. Crustaceans such as krill feed on the phytoplankton, and the food chain in these areas swells to support some of the largest creatures that inhabit or visit the continent. And throngs of penguins. 7 penguin species can be found within the Antarctic. These are Gen 2 penguins, easily distinguished from other species by their bright orange bill and white patches above their eyes. Gen 2s stand up to 80 centimeters tall and are the fastest swimming penguin, reaching speeds of around 35 kilometers an hour when underwater, and diving to 170 meters while on fishing expeditions in the cold, dark Southern Ocean. The Gen 2s share their icy shoreline with a number of marine mammals, including Antarctic fur seals. These seals have a dense layer of underfur, much thicker than that of terrestrial mammals, to help them survive the bitterly cold conditions. In the summer months, the Gen 2s live in breeding colonies of up to several hundred pairs of birds. Their nests are constructed from stones, grasses and mosses, with their droppings fertilizing the ground and ensuring a good growth of grasses the following year. Many pairs form long-lasting bonds and return to the same nest site year on year. Their chicks are produced 2 at a time and are fed by their parents for several months before they're old enough to fend for themselves in the icy seas. During this period, both parents brood the chicks alternately. Their partner sets out to forage in the early morning on fishing trips that may take them 20 kilometers from the nest. As the chicks get larger, their parents must spend ever longer at sea to meet the increasing demands of their offspring. In years of high food availability, large numbers of chicks can be raised by the colony. While in leaner years, hungry chicks may be seen chasing the adults for their fair share of the catch. In such years, only the strongest will survive. The first few months of life are also the most hazardous for Atlantic fur seals. But without land-based predators such as polar bears or humans, those that make it to adulthood show little fear of man and form a peaceful welcoming committee for hardy tourists who make the ultimate trip to experience the beauty that can be found at the very ends of the earth. The icebergs that form the dramatic floating landscape start life on land. Layers of snowfall gradually accumulate and are compressed over centuries into glaciers that slowly flow downhill towards the sea. When the glacier reaches the ocean, waves and weather combine to open up cracks